Now that I had the upper track done, I can move on to the lower one. With the doors all the way wide open, the far right roller will actually hang off the concrete a little bit. It's only about a foot, but I still feel like I need to build some forms and pour some new concrete to extend out to this area to support it. I wish it was as easy as it is in SketchUp to do this, but I know that's not the case. I raked the top couple inches of gravel off to the side and then got to digging. I planned on filling this hole back up with gravel and packing it down really good so I know the concrete would have a nice base underneath it. I'm definitely nervous about this new block of concrete settling over time, so I thought that if I put in a couple feet of gravel and packed it really hard, that might help prevent that. After hauling off the dirt and dumping it out in the field, I backed up to my gravel pile and loaded it back up. Definitely pushed this old trailer to its weight limit and probably a little past it. Once I got the hole filled back in, I grabbed my top of the line compactor and got it fired up and running well. On a cold morning like this, it runs a little lean, but after about 10 minutes it gets warmed up and runs like a charm. There is a slight smell of gas while it's running at times though. I thought I would attach a metal bracket to the existing concrete for the new concrete to be poured around, which would help keep it in place and keep it from sloughing off, in theory. I welded this thing together up at our shop, and then I brought it back down to the barn and bolted it in place. It was nice and strong. Thought it might help a little bit. I got to work building some forms using some old 2x6s. And I also cut some stakes on the table saw. After making sure the form was level in all directions, I drove the stakes in on all the sides and then fastened them to the concrete forms. My grandpa suggested to me that I cut a block diagonally and stick in the corner of forms like these because the corners of the concrete block almost always break off over time and it just looks bad. He says that if you block the corners off, that it works pretty well for preventing that. I filled back in around the outside of the form with gravel, which helps keep the form in place and keeps the concrete from coming out underneath the form. I was really excited to try out my new GoPro shovel mount. They really make mounts for everything these days. Ugh, just about got sick watching that. I wheeled the wheelbarrow over to the spot and poured it in. Not quite sure how I got so lucky, but it ended up being just the perfect amount of concrete. After screeding the concrete, I let it sit for about 30 minutes before coming in with a hand trowel to smooth it up a little bit. And then after another 30 minutes, I knocked the corners down. I know there's nothing more exciting than watching concrete dry, so here's a time lapse of it. You're welcome. Now that the concrete was poured and drying, I wanted to start on the metal track. These are the V-rollers I'm going to use, and I'm using 1 inch by 3/16 angle. I marked off the locations where I'm welding on the tabs that I'll bolt this track down to the concrete with, and then I cut all the tabs.
Quiet on set.
What?
Quiet on set.
No, be quiet.
Once I had the first tab measured and locked down on the saw in place, I set the stop so I could quickly cut the rest of them. I cleaned off the burrs that the bandsaw always leaves. And then I set up a jig to drill all the holes in the same place. I know I probably shouldn't be drilling with gloves on. I've learned this since. It'd be pretty easy to get wrapped up in the drill bit. I offset the holes in these tabs so the bolts would be a little ways away from the track. I didn't want the V-rollers hitting the bolts, of course. I was also worried about the weld bead hitting the roller, so I tried one here and it had plenty of clearance, so it wasn't going to be an issue. There's another one of my projects I was working on at the same time in the background. So I got them welded, I cleaned them up with the wire brush on the angle grinder. And then I hung them up so I could paint them. Wiped off the oils first, and then I applied a couple coats with the rattle can. Drake just had a new update release for him, and I can now change his color settings. I was trying out brown today. We were dog sitting his sister. I gave the concrete a nice washing down before attaching the track. Figure this was my last chance to do that with it unobstructed. From the outside of the door to the center of the V-roller was 1.5 inches, and I wanted the outside of the door to have 1 inch clearance from it to the building. So that means I needed to mount the top of the V at 2.5 inches away from the outermost part of the building. I had 32 feet of track, so I just kept it as 2 pieces. I centered the 2 pieces at the center of the doorway, and then I measured out from the building 2.5 inches and marked the track where it needed to go. Having done this at the other end as well, I now wanted to draw a line between the 2 marks so I could make sure the track was in a straight line all the way across. But I couldn't see the laser line. It was just too dim in the daylight, so I resorted to a old school chalk line, and I ended up using my laser level as a weight, so I gotta use my new high-tech toy after all. Stacy helped me hold the track in place while I hammer drilled through the concrete. I always dread doing concrete drilling.
Thank you.
What I was telling Stacy there was that sometimes you drill a hole and it goes right through it like butter. No problem at all. And then you move on to the next hole right next to it and it just won't budge at all for some reason. I don't know if there's more rocks in the way or what, but you never know what you're gonna get. The last hole to drill was in my new concrete. Got that bolted and tightened down, and the bottom track was done.